all your people are already getting communications from the nonprofits that they support to give. And what I find is a lot of churches don't want to oversaturate that space. Yet what's really happening is the fact that there's only one voice being heard, and it's the voice of the nonprofit organizations that your people are supporting.
Hey everyone, welcome to Distilled. We are super excited to have you and to be talking with DeWayne McNally from Mortarstone today. DeWayne, great to have you. Really excited for Mortarstone and just to talk with you all about year-end giving. I'm really excited because Mortarstone was something that I used as a software when I was an executive pastor, and it was super helpful software to me. And I only even kind of dip my toes in it, so to speak, as I've learned more about it. There's just so much that you all do. So thanks for joining us. Can you just give a quick intro about you and Mortarstone?
Hey, thanks for having me on the podcast today. This is awesome to be able to talk to you and your listeners. So, a little bit about me. So, I've been with Mortarstone for 2 years. I am the chief of staff. And prior to that, I had 8 years as an XP. Dan, you talked about using Mortarstone as an XP. I used Mortarstone as an XP and saw tremendous value out of it as far as how we discipled people towards generosity and giving. It's really a software platform. We call it a opinionated analytics platform. And what we've done is we've done a lot of the hard work and the ongoing research to figure out what's the best data to present and to talk about as church leaders as you seek to engage, disciple your givers, as well as execute with excellence. So thank you for having me.
I'm excited to dive in, and we're talking about when should I start talking about year-end giving. You all have a lot of insights into that because you see a lot of this data compiled. So when should I, as a pastor, start talking about year-end giving?
Dan, I would say if you haven't started already, you're already too late in the game for the conversation. So, and I say that somewhat tongue in cheek, but if you're thinking about this in November, you're already missing out on some opportunities. So let's just talk about that for a couple minutes, because when I think about this whole conversation, recognize that nonprofit organizations gear up for year-end giving. Actually, if they haven't already started thinking about it before the prior year ends, they are starting to think about it because so much of their giving comes in end of year giving. And so that's the Super Bowl for the nonprofit world. All your people are already getting communications from the nonprofits that they support to give. And what I find is a lot of churches don't want to oversaturate that space. Yet what's really happening is the fact that there's only one voice being heard, and it's the voice of the nonprofit organizations that your people are supporting.
Yeah, that's really interesting. You don't necessarily think of it as like a competitor, but these are all different voices that are coming at your people, and they're all competing for their attention and for what they're able to give in a given year.
And I hope that we don't view it as competition, but the thing that happens is the nonprofits are really good at letting people know we need your money. When's the last time you sat in a church where the church said, we need your money? It's typically a way different conversation. So the conversations that typically take place is we want this for you more so than from you. Nonprofits are just point blank, we want this from you conversation. So that's a key part of the dialogue in that. And recognize that nonprofits focus on gifts from wealth. They're not focusing on cash flow based giving. They know that 3% of your wealth, Dan, is cash. The rest of it is all in assets. And so they're going to talk to you or any of their givers about wealth transfers, wealth conversations. Wealth conversations take time. If you're going to do a real estate transaction and give real estate to a nonprofit or to a church, that takes time to execute and to make happen. If you're going to do, if you're selling a business and you want to do something. So there's people in all of our congregations who may potentially want to actually do something big for the church. But if they're not asked early enough in the year, they may not start it in a way that actually impacts this year and potentially flows over into the next year. But if we're not asking, nonprofits are asking those questions.
Hey, we wanted to pause the show real quick and tell you about something exciting that we have going on here at Parable.
If creating your church's budget feels overwhelming, you're not alone. Most pastors weren't trained in church budgeting, yet they're expected to lead with clarity.
That's why we created Parable Budgeting University, a 4-week live online program designed to help pastors like you create a mission-aligned budget that you can trust. You'll walk away with a finalized budget, practical tools and confidence to lead your church well.
Join us and take the overwhelm out of budgeting. Head to liveyourparable.com/budgeting university to learn more.
All right, let's get you back to the show.
So what would planning for end of year giving look like for churches to lessen that gap between how good nonprofits are at it and where churches need to improve?
So I think some of it comes down to starting to think through, you have different types of givers in your church. Our next podcast that we're going to touch on is more of a segmentation conversation, so we can dig into this more there. But the fact that you've got people who have just begun a giver journey with you. So how do you engage them differently to think about giving than what they've done before? If you've got top givers, your top givers are people who probably have ability to give beyond what they're doing today. How do you start to engage them, not from a cash flow gift perspective, but from a gift of asset, gift of wealth? And so thinking through and understanding how to segment those givers can be really important, so that you're talking to people where they're currently at and helping them identify that there is a clear next step to take. And so I don't know, hopefully that answers some of the question, but it's really digging deeper into the who you're talking to and thinking about not just doing a blanket ask, but doing a targeted ask, because that's really what the nonprofit space does, is they do targeted asks.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because if you're saying only 3% in cash, 97% in wealth, but that's probably an average, and it probably looks very different to a young person and an old person in different stages of life. And if you're talking about wealth to someone that is just out of college, they probably doesn't really matter to them or makes a lot of sense, right? So yeah, I'm excited to dive into that in the next conversation.
Yeah, because it's really one of the best parts of the conversation when you start thinking about, Dan, as you said, different generations think and give differently, different income stratas
Right.
think and give differently. And if we're not thinking the way that, my church's philosophy of ministry is, who are you, where are you at spiritually, and how do I help you take your next step? That's an individual conversation as opposed to a global conversation. And so when I think about this conversation, I have to think about where Dan is, where Kira is, where whoever is, and then think through, how do I engage them in that next step?
Okay, so we're both XPs in the past, and we were joking before, you're kind of like the Chiefs plate spinner, right? XPs have too much notoriously. And so if I'm an XP and I'm listening to this conversation, I'm like, that sounds great, but I've got so many things already to do. How do I engage my congregation well in this? Like, what would you point me to as key things that, just even to get started or to just take the next step in this?
Well, Dan, one of the things I would say is at Mortarstone, we have a end of year giving resource that is both as a tool that you can provide to givers, but also a tool for you as a church to actually lay out your planning. In the show notes, there will be a download link for that. And so you can go in there and get that. And really, if you have not called together your communications team along with yourself to lay out who are the people that we want to talk to, how do we want to talk to them, and begin to lay out the timing for that, now's the time to really start that. Because, those people who are age 70 and a half, who can get distributions from their IRA, helping them understand how to give differently from their IRA, which actually increases their ability to give and actually reduces their taxes, is a huge way of doing that. And so those are some of the things that I would really encourage you to do.
I love one word you said in there, which is team. And as you're thinking about this, there's people in your church that they understand retirement contributions and what can be used towards giving and how that can be beneficial. There's people that are just gifted in generosity and they can help craft messaging. You have team like communications, like you talked about. So, even if you're thinking as an XP, this is overwhelming, well, build a team. You rely on people that God's brought to the church to help you do this well. It's not all on you, but you might have to lead that charge,
So, DeWayne, give it to me straight. What is one takeaway or action item every pastor needs to take from this episode?
Plan now, execute well, ask your people to contribute and be a part of the mission that God's called them to, and not just think cash flow, but think assets. Reach out to us at Mortarstone, catch us on LinkedIn, or come to our website, mortarstone.com. We've got a team of people who would love to help you think through some of this and work it through. So that's another way that a potential next step as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, and we're really looking forward to the next round.
Likewise. Thank you. Thanks, Ted.
Dwayne.
Great to be here.